Welcome to It's Your Move. This show is a program of Westchester Independent Living Center. We are a disability advocacy, information, and referral center located at 10 County Center Road in White Plains. All our services are free to people with disabilities and their families. I'm Lisa Tarracone. There are over 130 long-term care facilities in our local region, Westchester, Putnam, and Rockland, with 44 nursing homes in Westchester County alone. And although aging in place has become a well-defined objective of most older adults, 90% of whom prefer to live in their homes as they age, according to an AARP study, certain factors prevent them from living independently on their own. Over 13,000 long-term care beds in our region are where those who are unable to live on their own reside. My guest, Gabriel Felix, is our organization's Ombudsman Program Coordinator of the New York State Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. And his job is to advocate to provide resources for older adults and persons with disabilities who live in nursing homes, assisted living, and other licensed adult care facilities. Welcome, Gabe.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Maybe we can just start out, Gabe, and just talk a little bit about some of the reasons. What are some of the reasons that persons with disabilities are living in long-term care institutions?
Well, there's actually quite a number of reasons. A lot of it usually stems from an inability for them to care for themselves, or the lack of suitable housing that is available for individuals with disabilities to safely live within their homes. A lot of it also has to do with administering of medication and needing additional resources that are very costly to the individual or to the family members. So they need additional resources, which are usually provided at these facilities.
Right. So give us a little overview of the Ombudsman Program.
Sure.
What some of your successes to date and why it was created?
Well, the Ombudsman Program is a federal program that was started really in the 1970s. It started out as pilot programs in the West Coast, and other states slowly picked up. It is part of the Older Americans Act and OBRA. And as the federal mandate, states across the country are required to have a long-term care ombudsman program to serve primarily as the advocate and oversight agency for individuals in long-term care facilities. As you know, the numbers in New York are very high. We are one of the highest, and actually when the program started, we were the #1 largest state with individuals in long-term care. We have since then been surpassed. And
you're saying New York State in the country?
New York State was at the time, in the 70s, the largest population of individuals residing in long-term care. Since then, we've been surpassed by other states, but there's still a very large number of individuals in long-term care. And the thought was we needed individuals outside of the facility who were not employed by the facility to be there as an oversight agency and to serve as advocates to help empower residents that were in these facilities so that their rights weren't being violated and their concerns were being heard, and they had a voice in their care and where they live, because long-term care for many of these individuals is their home. So some of the successes that you asked me about are being able to help the establishment of resident councils in long-term care facilities, a forum where the residents can come together and they can actually voice their concerns, voice the issues that they have, and look for resolutions, because it's their home and they want their issues addressed. Same thing with the establishment of family councils, so that the relatives and loved ones of individuals residing in these facilities could come together and voice their concerns and see how they could help one another. Some of the other things have been helping individuals advocate for problem resolution to issues that they have within the facility without having to rely on a regulatory agency or someone else coming in and forcing something to be done. Instead, we came to resolutions that were mutually beneficial to the facilities and to the individuals.
So give us an example of some types of investigations that go on. What are some of the complaints you hear? And so you have a team of ombudsmen.
Yes.
And currently
there's about 32 ombudsmen in our region
right now
that are active.
Okay, correct. And your region, again, Rockland, Westchester, and Putnam.
Yes.
And over 130 facilities, right? That's a huge catchment area.
That it is.
So you visit all those facilities, you go in, you gain entree, and you sort of develop relationships or get to know a lot of the residents and
Absolutely.
and to try to discuss any unmet needs or any issues or complaints? And what are some of the ones that you see more often?
Well, a lot of the complaints that we get, or concerns, because they're not always complaints, are individuals talking about food. Food is not coming in that's hot enough or on a time frame. Some individuals feel they're not receiving enough physical therapy. Some individuals feel that they're either on too much medication, not enough medication, medication that's not really for them. Other individuals want access. They want to be able to go out of the facility and go places. Some want to return back to the community. So there's a very big spectrum of complaints that we deal with, and concerns and complaints, depending on the severity of the situation and how much the individual wants us to look into, can prompt an investigation. So our ombudsman can conduct any type of formal investigation that the resident gives us the authority to conduct on their behalf. The purpose of those investigations are to not only verify complaints, but also to work towards a resolution that can be done within the facility. If an issue arises that is beyond the spectrum of what we are allowed to do and what we can really have an impact on the decision making, then we encourage the residents to escalate the issues, whether it be through the nursing home complaint hotline that's administered by the New York State Department of Health, or whether they may need services from an attorney. Maybe it's through Hudson Valley Legal Services or an attorney they hire on their own. But we empower the resident to make these decisions, and we ensure that they're aware of all the options they have available to them.
I would think that it would be difficult for folks living in a long-term care facility to trust someone, to, I mean, for fear of retaliation by the facility. How does an ombudsman gain the trust of a resident? I mean, you develop long-term care relationships with these folks. You go back repeatedly, get to know them on multiple levels, so to speak.
Absolutely, it's a combination of all of that. We have ombudsmen that are assigned to facilities, and some of them are gracious enough to cover multiple facilities. When they are assigned to the facility, they're there regularly, at least 4 hours a week.
So someone sees them all the time, they know they're
Absolutely.
around. Okay.
They attend resident council meetings once they've been invited by the resident council.
Right.
They are going room to room, door to door, and they're introducing themselves to people. They're asking them how they're doing. How's it going? Let's have a conversation about what's going on. What are some of your concerns? There's a lot of explaining of the role, some of the things that they can do to help, and there's a lot of encouragement for them to stand up for themselves, to advocate for yourself, to ensure that your voice is being heard. And by the way, we're here to help with that. We don't work for the facility, so we're not here to find out what's going on and essentially report back to the facility. On the contrary, we're here as your advocate. We're here to make sure that your voice is heard by the people that need to hear it, and we're going to work to find a resolution. And it's a lot of that personable interaction and that repeated interaction where it shows that you are invested in working with them and making sure their issues are heard, where those relationships once forged, it becomes easier for people to open
Absolutely.
up. And that's a big task that our ombudsmen take on.
Sure. And how is it dealing with the administration? I mean, you're going in, you're talking to residents, and now they realize they don't have to be complacent. They have rights. They can issue, voice their concerns. And maybe an administration of a facility is not used to that. And now you've got these member councils or family councils that are, starting to exert their, make demands, perhaps in some cases. So how do you deal with the administrations of some of these facilities? And have you been met with resistance?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It can be challenging. It depends on the facility. Some facility administrators and staff members have a very functional relationship with us. They don't view us as some sort of outside agency or force coming in and telling them how to run their facility. They actually see us as someone who is committed to the advocating for the individuals that are in the facility, as well as someone who's helping them resolve issues that perhaps their staff is overlooking, or perhaps due to circumstances beyond their control are being missed. So for many of them, they see us as, this is an opportunity for us to really tighten the ship and make sure everything is running properly while caring for the residents. The opposite of that, the adversarial relationship that sometimes comes into play with certain administrators or certain staff members at a facility, it can be a challenge. It's a challenge that we're willing to take on because at the end of the day, we're not here for the facility. We're not here to create an issue for you. We're here to help you resolve them. But if there is an adversarial relationship that's being initiated by the facility, we try to smooth that over by explaining to them who we are, why we're here. We're not your adversary. We're actually a helpful tool to help your facility grow and become a better place where people may want to come. And it really takes a creative approach of the ombudsman assigned to the facility and the staff that we have in our regional office going out and forging those relationships. So again, it's almost the same thing as with the residents. We have to convince the staff that we're not here to work against them. We're here to work with them to ensure that at the end of the day, the residents' needs are met and their rights aren't violated.
Right. If you encounter a resident who is unable to make a decision for him or herself, but they haven't really been declared incapacitated, how do you handle that situation if they appear confused?
Well, it can be a tricky situation because a lot of the facilities have memory care units. So now you may be dealing with dementia or Alzheimer's patients who you don't really know to the full extent that they are no longer capable of making decisions for themselves. The amount of lucid time that you have with them. The reality of the situation is anything that a resident comes to us with, we treat as this is an issue and this is a concern and we're going to look into it for you because that's what you voiced to us. Sometimes we may have to look at a resident's medical charts. We may have to see how lucid are they, how functional are they. Are they capable of reporting on things that have taken place, or are they sort of in a state where they're no longer capable of making decisions for themselves and we're just waiting for a doctor to sign off on this? Regardless of their state, we treat everything as a case, a concern, it's legitimate, and we need to look into it. Throughout the course of our investigation, we may determine, well, it seems like there was some confusion and maybe this isn't something that needs to go any further, but we never dismiss it at the onset. We treat it from beginning to end as a serious concern that needs to be looked into.
Right. Let's talk a bit about confidentiality.
Absolutely.
So I know the ombudsman, you receive concerns or complaints from family members as well, correct?
Yes.
And say a family member approaches an ombudsman, someone in your department, about a concern they have about their loved one, their mother, let's say. And the mother doesn't want to rock the boat or make waves with the institution, but the daughter is very adamant about addressing this concern. How do you your first, I imagine, obligation is to the resident, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. So
absolutely. If that resident is lucid and capable of making decisions for themselves, regardless of the complaint that is put forth by the individual, whether it be a family member, relative, it could be a staff member, it could be someone anonymously complaining, we must afford the resident the right to know that a concern was voiced and that they must really consider what that concern is, and if they want us to pursue the matter, then they can either give us written permission to do so, or they can give us contemporaneous authorization to look into the matter for them. If the family member has a concern and the resident does not share that concern and does not want us to look into the matter, we will not look into that matter. We can voice to the resident that this is a concern that was raised by a family member, and the family member obviously feels that it's a legitimate concern and needs to be looked into, but it essentially is a family matter. We let them know, maybe you should talk to your family member, maybe you guys can hash out what it is that really is the concern, and then if you're ready for us to intervene or you need us to, then let us know and we'll gladly be here as a resource to you.
right. In terms of other sources that you can receive concerns from or complaints regarding long-term care facilities, in addition to residents and friends that are local advocacy groups, maybe public officials, have you ever received any of those types of,
Yes.
have you heard from?
Yes,
Okay.
to both of those,
Okay.
absolutely. We've gotten concerns, anonymous can be anything, anyone, but we have had local advocacy groups. We've had local politicians that their offices, some of their constituents will reach out to them because that's something that they're familiar with doing, and then the office will reach out to us, and it sort of doesn't change the process. If they reach out to us, whatever group or whoever it is, we still have to go to the resident and say, hey, how are you? This is who I am. This is an issue that was reported. How do you feel about it? Is it something you want us to look into? And if the answer is yes, we proceed according to protocol. If the answer is no, sort of the same way we would treat a family member.
Sure. So with regard to, say, a public official reaching out to you or an advocacy group, this kind of gets into the area of a systemic issue, maybe?
Yep.
Anything you'd like to talk about with regard to systemic issues in long-term care facilities?
Well, I think that systemic issues in long-term care facilities unfortunately go hand in hand. It's something that has happened since the beginning of the establishment of long-term care facilities. There are a lot of issues out there that advocacy groups are petitioning for and advocating for, as they should, things like staffing ratios and more of community-based aging in place as opposed to being put into facilities where the individuals reside. What we can do is we really try to empower the residents by saying, if you feel that these are concerns that you share and you want your voice to be heard on this, we can help by helping you draft a letter, helping you reach out to the appropriate bodies, letting you know who you can contact and who is out there that is willing to support this alongside you. We do identify systemic issues, and we do have, because there is a state ombudsman and we have assistant state ombudsmen that work out of Albany, and they manage the regions, and we are in constant communication with them, and we let them know these are things that we see that are issues, and then they, out of the Albany office, will take on the mantle of going up and really advocating in favor of a systemic, of a change to a systemic issue, or providing statistical information to help support. They're the ones that really handle a lot of the systemic issues at the state level. What we do more so is connect the people to the appropriate bodies who can help them really further their cause. But we are aware that there are systemic issues that are there, and we hope to see changes to them and have them addressed. We just want to make sure that the proper groups, advocacy groups and local politicians and those lobbyists, they have access to the people that really need to communicate with them.
Do you see any changes on the forefront?
I hope so. I really do. I'm very hopeful. I will say that right now, I think there is a need for action on certain issues that unfortunately I have not seen enough movement on, and I think that is a little bit disappointing, but I'm going to continue to push people in the direction of making this an issue, voicing their concerns, and advocating for their right to voice their opinions on these things, and hopefully there will be change soon on it.
Absolutely. Well, this is a great program to start, and I know that's what we do at our center, right?
Yes.
As an advocacy center. How does your program, how does the Ombudsman program differ from Adult Protective Services or the Department of Health? That's
excellent. We are very different in the sense that we are not a regulatory agency. So the Department of Health, who has that regulatory capacity, they're going into facilities, they're conducting surveys, they're looking at sprinkler heads, and they're looking at light bulbs, light switches. They're also looking at medical charts for accuracy. They're there to enforce the nursing home regulations, federal nursing home guidelines and regs. That's their main, so that's their forte. The Adult Protective Services are primarily in place to ensure that individuals outside of these facilities are having their rights not be violated, and that they're living in safe environments, and that they have access to the resources they need to be in a safe environment. We focus on individuals inside of the facilities.
Right.
And unlike a regulatory agency that when they find a deficiency can issue or levy a fine, we're looking to resolve the issue within the facility. So we work hand in hand with the Department of Health, but we do have a very different approach to it. We are resident focused. I'm not as so much interested in a facility getting a derogatory mark for not having sprinkler heads that are according to code, although that is a major concern and should not be taken lightly. I am there to make sure that the quality of life of the individual at the actual facility is a high level of quality of life, that their rights aren't being violated, that they feel comfortable, that they feel safe, and that they're having a access to resources and access to activities that they want.
And I think that's, I mean, you know, just in my work as an advocate, in interacting with folks who live in long-term care facilities, and we have an NHG department that tries to avoid folks being placed in those facilities. The biggest fear is loss of control, loss of voice, right?
Absolutely.
And this program seems to try to mitigate that, right?
We try.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the certification process for the ombudsman.
Yes.
It seems like, you know, there are 32 of your staff in a large catchment area, so they've got a lot of ground to cover. And what does the training entail? And it's all volunteer fueled, correct? I mean, these folks aren't getting paid.
Yes, the bulk of our ombudsmen are volunteers. However, they receive the same training that paid staff receives. There is a 36-hour certification training portion that is held in the classroom. There also is a pre-classroom portion where we take individuals out into facilities. We show them what it's like. We give them a history of the program, an overview of what we do, and we sort of give them a taste of what it's like, a day in the life of. And then after they've completed the classroom portion, then they do a post-mentoring with an active ombudsman who's not necessarily a paid staff member. Now they're a potential peer, like a mentor, who will mentor them for an additional 8 hours out in a facility, show them the ropes, while that newly certified volunteer is taking the lead. So now you have a peer who's giving you tips as you are the one going out and conducting the work. Once you've completed that, which roughly is about 45 hours or so of training, so it's not something you can just do on a Monday because you've got free time. It is a long commitment. Then we assign you to a facility, and if you're a very nice person and you're willing to help more, we assign you to multiple facilities if you can take it. But we assign you to a facility, and we assign people to facility based on need. Our nursing homes are sort of the priority because nursing homes are the highest level of care and usually features the most vulnerable population that we service. And we want to make sure that our nursing homes are receiving adequate care. We also cover the assisted livings and adult homes, and we want to make sure that they aren't left on the back burner. We just deal with them more so as the paid staff, and if anyone is willing to take them on, we also have individuals go out there and volunteer at those facilities.
So, I mean, is the turnover, I mean, it seems like a lot of responsibility. You're interacting in environments that can be, you know, kind of challenging for a lot of folks.
Absolutely.
You're dealing with issues, complaints, concerns, you're dealing with family members, you're dealing with administration at these facilities. Who can be, I mean, what are you looking for in an ombudsman? I imagine anyone who expresses interest, you know, you'll accept into your training program, but who ideally would be an ombudsman, or maybe there isn't an ideal candidate? Someone just has a passion to do volunteer work.
Yeah, I think that someone having a passion to do volunteer work is absolutely necessary. I think that one of the terms that we use a lot is the professional volunteer. We're looking for individuals that have time and are committed towards helping people, towards the advocacy portion of it, because our training is more intensive than some other volunteer opportunities that people can do. So we recognize that by asking so much of our volunteers, we need to make sure that they know up front what they're getting into. So a lot of our volunteers are former medical personnel. A lot of them are retired, and most of our volunteers are individuals that are retired, and they have the free time, but they also bring a lot of subject matter expertise. We have a lot of retired nurses, LMSWs, LCSWs, MPHs.
Oh, wonderful.
It's
so they're knowledgeable
group.
about the
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Absolutely. But we also have individuals that are accountants. They were retired accountants and retired teachers, and each one of them brings their own skill set, which makes them more personable and makes them sort of an additional resource for us. Ideally, the person has the free time, has the commitment, and is willing to take this on long term.
Right.
because the bulk of our volunteers have been around for a while. In fact, we have a volunteer who just completed her 21st year
Oh
as a
my.
volunteer. And we have volunteers that range in ages, they range in the languages that they speak, the areas that they cover, all walks of life. And the more volunteers we have, the better service we can provide the individuals in long-term care
Sure.
facilities.
And so, do you have to be recertified every year? Once you're trained, are there certification?
So once you become certified and you're assigned to the facility, we have in-services throughout the year. And so on a monthly basis, we have our volunteers come together and we go over pertinent issues. We bring in guest speakers to talk about the waiver programs and
idea.
transitional
Right.
housing and Alzheimer's care and some of the new developments, and we go over complaint investigations and program documentation, because our volunteers don't just come in and do the friendly visitor. They're not just going around shaking hands and saying, hi, how are you, how's everything, and keep it moving. They are acting as official state ombudsmen. They wear the same ID badge that our paid staff wears, and they are there doing the job the same way we would be.
Right.
The only difference is they're not being
right.
paid.
Great. We have less than a minute. If someone wants to contact you, Gabe, to inquire about certification, you can just maybe give some. We're going to run this also at the end of the show, but Gabe, you'll give it to us again.
Yes, I definitely encourage anyone to go to www.wilc.org. There's a tab that says Ombudsman Services, and you will have all our contact information there. You can reach me directly, and definitely provide all the resources on there so that you can fill out an application, and we'll be calling you back. We have certification training coming in April 9th.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for
We
having
may
me.
have you come back. I've got questions I didn't get to.
I would love to.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.